What's going on, everybody? Welcome to part 2 of Pre-Timeskip Luffy versus Kaido. So here's where I think I really got off to a great start in the first video. I think I was able to articulate the battle prowess, the logistics of how, really well. Where I got lost in the sauce was not putting my emotion behind it. I read your guys' comments, I loved every single one of them, they were all great. The issue was, I wasn't able to convey why I thought or why I was even making that video. The reason I was making that video is because you guys come from a different generation. At least a lot of you do. You guys come from a generation that got into One Piece probably around the post-Timeskip arc. You know, like, it right in that sweet spot of Sabaody, you guys probably were coming in. Whereas my generation, who are 90s babies, we were coming into this from the beginning. We saw Luffy overcome threat after threat after threat that was deemed unbeatable by everybody else within the story. I mean, you look at Buggy, you look at freaking Smoker, you look at Arlong, you look at Crocodile. Everybody pre-Timeskip in the golden era of One Piece was deemed impossible for Luffy to beat. This is no different with Kaido. And the formula would still work in Wano against Kaido if it was written in a different manner. And if you remove Haki, give Luffy his original awakening as intended, it could still happen. Now the reason I'm making a part 2 of this video isn't to rehash old wounds. What I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to paint you a vivid picture of what is missing in current One Piece and why it would have been so beautiful to see it in modern One Piece. So essentially, to boil this down, Luffy was the personification of overcoming impossible challenges. And he did this in a multitude of different facets. His first was against freaking Arlong. That's the big notable one, was Arlong, right? Because we witnessed Arlong do horrible atrocities. We saw how big of a threat was, and it was like, oh crap, how is Luffy going to beat him? And then Luffy gets stuck in the concrete, and it's like, oh shit, this is not good. Luffy might not be able to win against this guy. This might be really bad. This could be horrible. So Luffy was able to prevail, destroyed the map room, saving Nami from her grief. Nami was a slave to Arlong. Nami was in such a horrible place. Luffy was able to save her. So Luffy, as a character with Oda's great writing, was able to dismantle Arlong from an emotional standpoint, from a physical standpoint, and from a political standpoint. Because there were multiple things about Arlong that made him such a tyrant. Number one, he was paying off the Navy. Number two, he was freaking hoarding every resource amongst the island. I can't even count anymore, but Nami was into the mix. So you saw Arlong as this massive threat, physically imposing fisherman, able to chop down buildings, throw a freaking building at somebody, or tip it upside down. You know, you had all these things that made Arlong so imposing, yet Luffy was able to defeat him. Everyone underestimated Luffy. Then, immediately after, we meet Smoker. Luffy got his ass handed to him by Smoker. It wasn't even close. Y'all don't remember this? Because again, you're probably younger, and if you do remember, you're on my side on this for sure. I remember Luffy trying to grab Smoker, and he was just like, what the fuck, and then you just watch Luffy get absolutely pinned, and there's a moment, I remember this clearly, where you're like, this is it, Luffy's going to prison, we're getting a prison arc. We're going to go to prison, we're going to meet some cool characters, because there's no way Luffy beats this Marine. There's no chance, and that solidified the position of captain within the Marines at that point in the story. This guy was no joke. The Grand Line is no joke. They got motherfuckers made out of smoke going into the Grand Line? What? Right? So that really cemented everything right then and there. And then you have Crocodile. Crocodile was the pinnacle of that pendulum shift, where it went from happy-go-lucky fun times to a very serious story. And Crocodile, being the great villain he was, defeated Luffy on multiple occasions, stabbed him with his hook, buried him within the sand, poisoned him, dehydrated him to the point he was mummified. And by happen chance, Luffy survived all of these events. However, it's important to note that when we're going back and looking at my video of pre-time skip Luffy versus Kaido, it could have gone down the exact same way, where Luffy's getting his ass beat every single time, just like with Crocodile. There would have been no difference, just like with Smoker. There would have been no difference. What made pre-time skip One Piece great was just the moments where his crew, Luffy's crew, is just like, you can't do it, Luffy. We shouldn't do this. We're all gonna die. And Luffy just solemnly and calmly looks at them and says, nope, I'm gonna kick their ass. And then goes and does it. Like, when you put your mind to something, you can overcome those challenges. You don't have to get analytical and have to evaluate every single tool set you have before going into a conflict. You go into the conflict, you overcome the adversity, and then you move on to the next adventure. That was the original One Piece formula I personally fell in love with. Now, you don't have to fall in love with that formula. One Piece currently is great. I'm not saying it's not. I never said it's not great. It's just not the same to me. And that's fine. I'm nostalgic for pre-time skip One Piece. That's when I fell in love with it. You guys, maybe a little bit different. But transitioning over to the new world, without Haki, without the 2-year training arc, you know, there's multiple ways and multiple facets of writing that you could have tackled that challenge. Especially for Luffy. Luffy is such a good character because of how bland he is. And you guys are probably sitting there like, what the fuck? Luffy's bland? No, he's not. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. He's a skinny kid. He's a skinny kid with a rubber ability in a world where people can turn to magma. That's bland. And that's what made it beautiful. You saw this rubber boy kicking ass. You saw him freaking cover his hands in water and just pop, 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 pop. Or blood, when he used his blood against freaking Crocodile, and just smashed him. Dude, have that formula against Kaido. Here's what would happen. And I said I wouldn't rehash old wounds, but I really want to paint this picture. Okay, you have Luffy standing there. He'd just been defeated, let's say 5 times. Let's say 5 times, right? And one thing we all forget, we've never seen it within the story. I want you guys in the comments, if I missed it, send it to me, because it's non-canon in the only event I have up here where it's happened. No character in One Piece has ever drowned with a Devil Fruit ability. Not a single one. And that could have been utilized for the first time against Kaido, because it would show that Kaido was such a dominant force. Luffy couldn't beat him with the conventional One Piece formula, and it would have been the first time post-time skip, where you had this threat that Luffy could not beat by smashing his face in. He had to find a way to work together with his crew. Now we have a great crew dynamic, and you're seeing Luffy work with his crew to defeat this enemy. And you could have had the paradoxical force of Luffy and Roger existing parallel to each other, but going very different routes. Because the way I look at it, and this is a side tangent, so I apologize, but you're here for it now. Roger seemed to be an overwhelming force solely on his own. Whereas you could have written Luffy to learn from that mistake when Kuma demolished the crew, and made Luffy train with his crew in ordinance to be in sync with each other. To never fight alone again. To adventure together until they get to the One Piece. That should have been, in my opinion, the formula. That would have been a winner. And together, just like they did back against Gecko Moria, who also, by the way, Luffy couldn't defeat at all. He got his ass handed to him. Against Gecko Moria, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not, by the way, he got his shadow taken. A little bit of sunlight, Luffy would have been toasted and dead, bruh. Okay? So, the fact that he beat Gecko Moria anyway tells me he could beat Kaido. Alright? There's no difference. But anyway, getting back on track. Luffy working in tandem with his crew would have been the way to right and correct the issues Luffy had that were deemed weaknesses. He could have corrected those weaknesses. It would be such a cool thing to see Usopp and then Luffy smashing, and then freaking Frankie grinding, and Zoro slicing, and Sanji just like, The crew working in tandem to overcome such a dominant force that was deemed so impossible to beat, none of the world's forces could take it down. And Luffy's crew, not this Kid Law Luffy alliance. Throw that shit into the dumpster. I don't want to see it ever again. They're rivals. Don't bring them to make them do teamwork. It was awesome. I'm not lying to you. That was fucking great. But you could have done the same thing with Luffy's crew. And you could have watched as all of Luffy's crew members, all of the Straw Hats, grew simultaneously together in battle experience. Because this whole time, this whole One Piece formula pre-time skip, we see Sanji, Zoro, and Luffy take on the big three bad in X organization. And that was the formula for battles, right? I would have liked to see that evolve post-time skip to Straw Hats versus Thread. Straw Hats wipe the floor with Caesar. Okay, let's say there's no hockey. There is a 2-year time skip, no hockey. They wipe the floor with Caesar through sheer teamwork. He's made of gas, while Usopp uses fire, right? And Luffy tricks Caesar into turning into oxygen. And I know what you're thinking, Luffy doesn't trick people, he's so honest, blah, blah, blah. That's the evolution, people. That's what we would be looking for, is character development. Not this analytical, who beats who because of power scaling, X, Y, bounty level, this, Yonko level. No, dude. It's a spectrum of growth. It's experience from battles. It is hardening from overcoming impossible challenges and learning from those experiences. That's what builds a great character. Luffy should not be the same character he was against Bellamy that he is against Kaido. That's not what I'm saying. And a lot of you in the other video, again, I appreciate you watching, I appreciate you commenting. This is not a bad thing, I'm not slighting you. But a lot of you seem to think that that's what I was saying. That the guy that beat Bellamy is the exact same that's going to beat Kaido because of a Devil Fruit Awakening. It's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying these battles would have stacked, Luffy would have evaluated, and corrected every single weakness from those battles. His fight against Crocodile, he learned because when he went to Marineford, he immediately soaked himself in water to get ready to square up with Croc. Okay? Same thing when going up against Kaido. Kaido would have turned into a dragon, chewed Luffy up, spit him out, used his Boro Breath. Luffy would have been toasted and sitting there reflecting, and then you have some shenanigans where the crew are doing their own adventures, fighting their own battles, then they get together with Luffy in a final standoff against Kaido. And Kaido has the ability to fly, and that poses a huge issue. That's another thing that makes him a wild threat. And the crew's trying to figure out how to beat him. Ultimately, they have to sacrifice the Sunny in order to drown Kaido and get him into the water. And then they're forced to have a new ship that rivals the Oro Jackson. And that's how you write that story, ladies and gentlemen. Not through this crazy crap with... Yeah! No, man. No. You write it through experience, overcoming adversity, adapting, and reevaluating. Just like if any of you have ever done combat sports, or like me, you're a martial artist, I'm a boxer, I'm doing all this stuff in martial arts, you know when you start that journey that you're forever a student. And that's what Luffy's crew should represent. They should represent what it's like to go from these levels and learn from them. Right now, I can't say that they have. I don't know that Luffy's learned anything different. You know, between post-time skip and pre-time skip outside of hockey. I can't say that he's better with his Devil Fruit. He's really not. Not better than when he used Gear 3rd for the first time, or Gear 2nd for that matter. He's not more efficient. He's about the same in efficiency. He says he can use it longer, and that's cool. That's great. That's part of stamina, but I can't say he's learned any different techniques. He learned Red Rock, but Red Rock is, again, a technique that's based around hockey, so is Red Hawk for that matter. So, again, I can't say he learned anything. I can't say that he's doing really cool shit with his Devil Fruit. I can't say that his Gumma Gumma ability has changed drastically in the way he uses it. You know, it just isn't the same. It's not the same. And that's okay. But, again, for the premise of these videos, what I want you guys to have an open mind about is what if the original formula for One Piece existed today? it would be so freaking awesome. It would be so cool because the consistency is what made One Piece beautiful. And now it's still consistent. It's still consistent, but it's certainly not the same. With the Vegapunks and Joy Boy. Joy Boy never needed to come into the mix. I'm going to make another video about that, but let me tell you why real quick, just to drop little seeds. Joy Boy never needed to exist because you had Gold Roger. Okay? Why do you need a character like Joy Boy to exist, who was in the realm of 800 years ago? I get that you're lore building, but you already have your lore with Roger. We know nothing about the Roger Pirates even now. We know some of them. We know there was Rayleigh, we know there was Crocus, we know there was Scopper, and we know there was Seagull, and we know their names, but we don't know who they were. We don't know what they did. We don't know how they learned about the Void Century. We know none of these facts. But yet you're going to introduce a subplot of a subplot of a subplot about Joy Boy. No, you see what I'm saying? It's so convoluted now where you have to be analytical and you have to think in levels in order to keep up with the story. And that's where I think One Piece needs to be retconned. I think it needs to go back, but that's a story for another day. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. I'm trying to get to 500 subscribers by December. Help me do that. I greatly appreciate it. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one, and please be safe out there, guys. Bye-bye.